Husband found my hidden bank account with $75,000 in it after 3 years of marriage and won't talk to me. Now he's filing for divorce while I'm 7 months pregnant. Hi, I, 34F, am currently 7 months pregnant with my first child, and my husband, 36M, of 3 years just found out about a secret bank account I've been keeping since before our marriage. Now he's completely shut me out and is filing for divorce. I know how this sounds, but please hear me out before judging. My husband Mike and I met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. I had planned to skip it after a long day at work, but my friend practically begged me to come. Looking back, it feels like fate. Mike sat across from me, and we instantly clicked. He was intelligent, funny, and had this quiet confidence about him that I found incredibly attractive. After that dinner, we started dating, and things moved pretty quickly. He's always been financially responsible, has a great job as a structural engineer at a respected firm, and we've never struggled with money. Our life together has been stable and loving, at least until now. What Mike doesn't know, or didn't know until last week, is that before I met him, I had some really traumatic experiences that shaped how I approach relationships and finances. When I was 25, I was in a relationship with a guy named Eric who seemed perfect at first. He was charming, attentive, and everyone in my life loved him. 6 months into our relationship, we decided to move in together. That's when things started to change. It was subtle at first. He suggested combining our finances to make things easier. He offered to handle all the bills since he was better with money. I thought it was helpful, even sweet. But gradually, he took control of everything. He questioned every purchase I made. He gave me an allowance from my own salary. He isolated me from friends and family, saying they were bad influences who wanted me to spend recklessly. When I wanted to visit my parents who lived in another state, he claimed we couldn't afford it, despite the fact that I knew we had the money. By the time I realized I was in an abusive relationship, I had no access to our joint accounts, my credit cards were maxed out. I later discovered he had been using them, and I had lost touch with most of my support system. It took me 2 years to finally gather the courage to leave. When I did, I literally had nothing. I had to sleep on a friend's couch and rebuild my life from scratch, working 2 jobs to pay off the debt Eric had accumulated in my name. After that experience, I promised myself I would always maintain a separate emergency fund that only I knew about, just in case. It wasn't about not trusting future partners, it was about making sure I never felt trapped again. So when Mike and I got married, I already had about $30,000 saved in a separate account. I continued to add to it with a small portion of my income from my job as a marketing manager, usually around $500 to $800 a month. We've always had joint accounts for our household expenses, mortgage, savings, and investments. I've never hidden my income or shortchanged our joint finances. This emergency account was just my personal safety net that I continued to maintain. In my mind, it wasn't about Mike at all, it was about the promise I made to myself after escaping a terrible situation. Everything was fine until last week. Mike was using my laptop because his was being repaired, and he needed to check some work emails. While he was using it, a notification from my email popped up showing a quarterly statement from the bank where I keep this account. He clicked on it, which I understand was an innocent mistake. He thought it might be for our joint accounts, and saw the details of an account he knew nothing about, with a balance of just over $75,000. When I got home that day, I could immediately tell something was wrong. Mike was sitting at our kitchen table with this strange, blank expression. When I asked what was wrong, he turned my laptop around to show the bank statement email, still open on the screen. "What is this?" he asked, his voice completely flat. My heart dropped. I knew instantly what he had found. For a moment, I couldn't speak. It was like all the air had been sucked out of the room. "It's my personal account," I finally said. "I've had it since before we met." $75,000, he said, still in that emotionless voice. "You've been hiding $75,000 from me for our entire relationship." I tried to explain. I told him about Eric, about the financial abuse, about how terrified I had been when I left that relationship with nothing. I tried to make him understand that it wasn't about not trusting him specifically but rather my own need for security. I told him I never intended to deceive him, that in my mind this account was like an emotional security blanket that helped me feel safe. But he wouldn't listen. As I spoke, his expression changed from blank to hurt to angry. He just kept asking the same questions over and over. Why would I hide something so significant from him for our entire relationship if I truly loved and trusted him? Why didn't I feel I could tell him about my past trauma? Did I really think he was capable of treating me the way Eric had? "I thought we had complete honesty," he said. "I thought we were partners in everything. But you've been lying to me every day for 5 years." "I wasn't lying," I protested. "I just didn't tell you about this one thing." "A lie of omission is still a lie," he responded. "And this isn't like hiding a chocolate stash or a shopping splurge. This is a massive amount of money you deliberately kept secret." The argument went in circles for hours. Nothing I said seemed to make any difference. By the end of the night, Mike had packed a bag and said he was going to stay with his brother for a while. He needed space to think, he said. That was 5 days ago. He's not answering my calls or texts except to say he's processing and needs space. I've been beside myself with worry and regret, barely eating or sleeping. Yesterday, I received divorce papers from his lawyer. When I saw them, I nearly collapsed. I'm completely devastated. I'm 7 months pregnant, emotionally wrecked, and terrified about the future. To make matters worse, Mike apparently told his family about the situation, and they've taken his side completely. His mother, who I thought I had a good relationship with, called me a manipulative liar and said I never deserved her son. His sister texted that she always knew there was something off about me. They're all blowing up my phone with awful messages. I finally called my own parents yesterday and told them everything. They were sympathetic about my reasons for keeping the account, but they also think I made a huge mistake by not being transparent with Mike. My dad, who's always been my biggest supporter, said gently, "Honey, you can't build a marriage on secrets, no matter how good your intentions were." My friends are divided. Some understand my need for security while others think I betrayed Mike's trust. My best friend Lisa thinks Mike is overreacting and should at least hear me out. But my other close friend Jen, who's known both of us since we started dating, says she can understand why he feels so betrayed. Think about it from his perspective, Jen said. He thought you two shared everything, and then he discovers you've been keeping this huge secret. It probably makes him question what else you might be hiding. I haven't been able to focus at work, and my boss has noticed. I finally broke down and told her what was happening, and she's been understanding, letting me work from home and take time off as needed. But I can't hide from my problems forever. The worst part is that we were so excited about the baby. We had just finished painting the nursery the weekend before all this happened. Mike had been so attentive throughout the pregnancy, going to every doctor's appointment, talking to my belly every night, and reading all the parenting books. Now I'm faced with the possibility of going through the rest of this pregnancy alone and raising our child in a broken home because of my mistake. I keep asking myself if I should have told him about the account from the beginning. Was I wrong to keep this secret? I never saw it as a betrayal. In my mind, it was just self-protection that had nothing to do with Mike. But seeing his reaction, I realize how it looks from his perspective. How do I fix this when he won't even talk to me? How do I convince him that I do trust him and that this account wasn't about him at all? And if I can't fix it, how do I prepare to be a single mother while dealing with the heartbreak of losing the man I love? I never thought my past trauma would end up destroying my future happiness, but that's exactly what's happening. I'm scared, heartbroken, and don't know where to turn. Update 1. First, thank you all for your comments and messages. Reading through them has been both painful and enlightening. Some of you were harsh but fair, others were incredibly supportive, and a few shared similar experiences that helped me feel less alone. After reflecting on everything, I can see now that while my intentions came from a place of self-protection, my actions hurt my husband deeply. After days of unanswered calls and texts, I finally got desperate and sent Mike an email on Friday, pouring my heart out and begging for just one conversation in person. To my surprise, he responded within an hour, agreeing to meet me for coffee the next day at a neutral location, a cafe near his brother's place. It was the first time we'd spoken face-to-face since he left. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting at a corner table. My heart broke a little when I saw him. He looked terrible, pale, with dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in days. His usual neat appearance was disheveled, and he'd lost weight in just a week. I probably didn't look much better, considering I'd been crying myself to sleep every night. When I sat down, there was this awful, awkward silence between us, so different from our usual comfortable rapport. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but in that moment, all my prepared words seemed inadequate. I started by apologizing sincerely for the deception and tried again to explain my reasoning. I told him in more detail about my relationship with Eric, things I had previously only mentioned in passing because they were painful to talk about. I described the panic attacks I used to have after leaving that relationship whenever I checked my nearly empty bank account, and how having the secret fund helped ease that anxiety. I wasn't trying to excuse my behavior, just help him understand it. For the first half hour, Mike barely spoke. He just listened, occasionally nodding or asking brief clarifying questions. His face remained impassive, and I couldn't tell if I was getting through to him at all. Finally, he opened up about his feelings. His voice was strained when he spoke, like he was fighting to maintain control. I feel like our entire relationship has been built on a foundation of distrust, he said. Every time you put money into that account instead of telling me about your fears, you were choosing not to trust me. Every day for 5 years, you had the opportunity to be honest with me, and every day you chose not to be. He asked if I'd ever planned to tell him about the account, and I honestly couldn't answer that. I hadn't thought that far ahead. The account had just become part of my routine, something I didn't even question anymore. Then Mike told me something I didn't know, something he'd never shared before. His own father had secretly maintained separate finances throughout his marriage and had been diverting family money into his personal accounts for years. When Mike was 12, His dad suddenly announced he was leaving, and he took almost all their money with him. Mike's mother, who had been a stay-at-home mom, was left struggling to support 3 children with no financial resources and no recent work experience. "I watched my mom work 3 jobs and still barely keep food on the table," Mike said, his voice breaking. "I watched her cry at night when she thought we were asleep, worrying about how to pay the bills. All because my father had been secretive about money and prioritized his own security over his family's well-being." Mike explained that because of this experience, he had always promised himself he would have complete financial transparency in his own marriage. "Finding my secret account triggered all those childhood wounds and made him question everything about our relationship. I'm not my father," I said quietly. "I wasn't trying to take advantage of you or take away from our family." "I know that in your head," he replied. "But it still feels like betrayal. And it makes me wonder what else you haven't told me because of your past trauma." The conversation was emotionally exhausting for both of us, but it ended with one small positive step. Mike agreed to attend a couples therapy session next week. He's still staying at his brother's and proceeding with a divorce for now, but he's willing to talk, which is a small step forward. After our meeting, I went home and immediately scheduled an appointment with my own therapist to work through my issues with financial security and trust. I realize now that carrying this trauma into my marriage without addressing it properly was unfair to both of us. I should have worked through these issues with professional help instead of creating secret coping mechanisms that ended up damaging my relationship. I also reached out to Mike's mother, which was one of the hardest phone calls I've ever made. I expected her to hang up on me, but she agreed to listen. I explained my history of financial abuse and why I had kept the secret account, not as an excuse but as context. To my surprise, once she understood my background, she was much more sympathetic than I expected. She shared that in the years after Mike's father left, she too had developed trust issues around money and understood the fear that drives that behavior. "I still think you should have been honest with my son," she said. "But I understand where it came from now." She promised to talk to the rest of the family and ask them to back off with the angry messages, which was a huge relief. I'm still terrified about the future. I'm less than 2 months away from giving birth, and the stress of this situation can't be good for the baby. I've been trying to stay calm, practicing the breathing exercises my doctor recommended and focusing on taking care of myself physically even while I'm an emotional mess. But at least there's a tiny glimmer of hope that Mike and I might be able to work through this. I know it won't be easy, and I know I've damaged his trust in a fundamental way. But I love him so much, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild what we had, this time with complete honesty and transparency. I'll update again after our therapy session next week. Thank you again for all your support and advice.